Lord, let there be peace among the children. Let there be peace. Let there be
Welcome to Reflections. Your speaker is the Reverend Eron Henry of Alexandria, Virginia, in the United States.
Dare to be a Daniel, dare to stand alone, dare to have a purpose firm, dare to make it known. This song refrain speaks to a conundrum that Daniel, the biblical hero, faced and dealt with aplomb. How to remain active in and be part of a system, a society, yet facing down its worst excesses, even if it means doing so alone without the support of others. We recall that Nebuchadnezzar, the king, made Daniel rule over the entire province of Babylon. Yet it was this same Daniel who stood in defiance of an unjust lord that threatened the lives of the Jewish exiles living under the empire, including that of his own. If nothing else, Daniel shows that one need not withdraw from society if one is disgruntled with or is unhappy with features of that society. He also shows that one need not become society's enemy or even its nemesis when one is disgruntled and unhappy with what is going on, that one need not become destructive, destroying lives and institutions. He also demonstrates that one need not become acquiescent, bowing down to those aspects in society or the community that one finds intolerable. To be sure, there is a place for withdrawal. The early monks, many of whom withdrew from Roman society and the hierarchical church, were a source of renewal for the church, and in the eyes of some scholars and historians, actually saved the Catholic Church from itself. But Daniel shows that one can remain engaged and yet not bow down to the dictates of the forces of darkness and evil, or fall prey to more subtle forces that seduce and confuse. One can remain engaged without instituting Armageddon or calling down an apocalypse. Yes, it is true. The book of Daniel foresaw apocalyptic terror, metaphorically represented by the four beasts in Daniel chapter 7. But he was not so much prescribing judgment as he was describing the reality and the consequences of evil empire. Unwarranted power and the thirst for unwarranted power have consequences. Systems created to sustain and maintain such brutal and unmediated power will collapse under their own sheer weight. Such unmitigated power can be sustained but only for a time. For me, one of the more intriguing characters in the Bible is Obadiah. Not Obadiah the prophet after whom one of the books of the Bible is named. I speak of the Obadiah whose only appearance is in 1 Kings 18. Obadiah was the palace administrator during the reign of Ahab and Jezebel over Israel, both of whom have gone down as among the most corrupt and oppressive rulers in Israel's history, so corrupt and brutal that it led to a showdown with Elijah the prophet. Obadiah was described in 1 Kings 18 as a devout believer in the Lord. How could that be? How could the man who was effectively the prime minister under such a disreputable set of rulers be deemed a righteous man? The passage 1 Kings 18, 1-16 states that Obadiah gave evidence of his piety and devotion through the risks he took on the behalf of God's people. In the midst of the crackdown by Ahab and Jezebel, Obadiah risked his status, his position, his very life to rescue those who were on the king's most wanted list. Verse 4 says, while Jezebel was killing off the Lord's prophets, Obadiah had taken 100 prophets and hidden them in 2 caves, 50 in each, and had supplied them with food and water. Obadiah acted on the strength of his convictions, despite the fact he was the one expected to help carry out the diktats of the queen, who was bent on a revolutionary cultural and religious change in Israel to reflect that of her own Phoenician background. We are familiar with similar stories in other conflicts, many of them during the Second World War. There was the Huguenot commune in south-central France, established in the 17th century, whose residents made the commune a haven for Jews fleeing from the Nazis. They hid them at risk to themselves and provided passage for them into Switzerland. Perhaps the more remarkable story was that of Oskar Schindler. Schindler was an industrialist and a member of the Nazi Party, yet he is credited with saving the lives of some 1,200 Jews during the Holocaust by employing them in his factory and shielding their identity. A member of the Nazi Party risked life and limb and everything to save the enemies of his own party. Daniel, in his personal dealings, stood up to the power as brutal as the Nazis, yet he operated within it. This is what geniuses of history are made of. In more modern times, obvious names are Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Neither was acquiescent, but neither tried to destroy the communities, the societies they lived in. They fought and they won, even though both paid with their lives. Another genius, Jesus of Nazareth, stood up to the powers and won with the example of his life and death. The genius of being a Daniel or a Jesus escapes most of us. How to be part of, yet stand up to the culture. We withdraw or vilify, separate or seek to destroy, pull away or undermine. How to be a Daniel, engaged, yet if necessary, standing alone.
That was Reverend Eron Henry. Reverend Henry worked for a global Christian nonprofit for more than 12 years and traveled to 30 countries. He is an expert in global Christian mission and international religious affairs. He is the author of Reverend Mother, a novel available on Amazon.com. You may follow Reverend Henry on Facebook or on Twitter. You may book Reverend Henry for speaking engagements by writing to eronhenry@yahoo.com. That is ERONHENRY@yahoo.com. Among the topics he covers are congregational renewal and how to engage in effective Christian mission. I am Joyful, and be sure to listen to the next installment of our podcast, Reflections.
Lord, let there be peace among the children. Let